Mr. Shaimiev, dear participants of the Strategic Vision Group. It would be difficult to find another location that would reflect the essence of this dialogue of the Russia and Islamic World Group better than Bulgar. And I am deeply impressed by what I've heard here. I hope that our foreign guests, once they come back home, will assist in spreading the world so that this part of Islamic heritage would be known outside Russia, that people in the Islamic world would know about the ancient Bulgaria and about the new Islamic Academy that is now being created here in Bulgar. I'm sure that this project would not be successful if not for the long-lasting efforts of former President of Tatarstan and today State Councillor Mr. Shaimiev, who was one of the founders of our strategic group and was its co-chair together with the late Yevgeny Primakov. The history of Russia's Volga region proves that it is possible to live and have peaceful coexistence between people of different religions, including Christians and Muslims, as well as people of difficult ethnic groups. And such peaceful coexistence can exist not as a short pause in between violent conflicts, but as it can be business as usual. Indeed, Russia never knew any religious wars where any one religious community would seek to displace or eliminate a different community. Contrary to Western Europe, Russia never had to choose between multiculturalism, if you understand it as splitting your society according to ethnic or religious principle, and multi-ethnicity, and that is, or multi-identity. Russia has always been multi-identical. Despite its enormous territory, Russia has long left behind fracturizing. It's not fractured despite having so many communities. It's rather diverse, and its inhabitants are very used to this feeling of being diverse, and very often on top of our own identity as Muslims or Christians or Tatars or Russians, on top of that there is another feeling of a greater identity, and that is our statehood, where people feel very strongly for the state, for their country. The stronger the country was, the more stable Russia's multi-level identity became. The success of Russia's cultural symbiosis was greatly helped by the fact that the basic values of the various ethnic groups that make up our country, they are very close to each other historically. Both the Christian and the Islamic traditions are not very big about individualism. They welcome self-realization of a human being through collective action and collective performance, and also the idea of a social state plays a very special role in both religions. Also, spiritual self-limitation of one's own rights are also considered a big notion in our part. The emblem of such behavior was it is rather telling that the Western type of individualism was reflected in the Charlie Hebdo case, and it's very telling that most people in Russia don't approve of Charlie Hebdo as a publication. I would also like to share with you our understanding that Russia's model of Islam is closer, that Russia's model of national identity is closer to Islam in terms of you can be of any ethnic or religious background and still be a Russian. efforts to impose different ideas onto Russians, and this idea is one of the cornerstones of the European Union. There have been many efforts, but it's important that these efforts have not been successful, and a different idea of identity cannot be imposed on Russians. At the same time, the people of Russia are not a sum of all the various ethnic groups living in this territory, nor is it a contract among these groups, because any contract would be a time-limited measure. Rather, this symbiosis is a thing of history, is a factor of history. To feel yourself Russian, a citizen of Russia, is not committed, is not obliged to reform their spiritual life and make it meet some new standards. They are not obliged to change their religious views or non-religious convictions. They are not obliged to adopt a certain set of values as they increasingly demand in the European Union. You don't have to adopt political correctness or tolerance or and so on. This number of values that are becoming obligatory is increasing in the West, and these values are now pressurizing religion, especially Christianity, taking up their place. The Western society is going through a crisis, but it's only a crisis of a specific type of government or state. It's not a civilization crisis in a global scale. It is not a clash of civilizations, but it is a merely problem of Western Europe. We in Russia and you in your countries are not participants of this conflict. We're not parties to this conflict, but even though we cannot be indifferent to this crisis, we need to realize that it's not our conflict, it's not our crisis. Our civilization, values and standards have a lot in common, and it seems to me it would be interesting to discuss it within the framework of our group. Thank you.